right, here we go.
Hey everybody! Good morning, happy Sunday. Um, Gotta getting kind of I don't want to say late start to the day, but yeah, uh, it took me a minute to remember what I was gonna do for today, and I'm trying to line all that up. I have um, in the voice chat right now. I have Shamrock Forge and Chris Schaefer. You can't hear them yet, but I can. And I believe I have Sam Towns is going to be joining the server, and uh, yeah, and he'll be joining us at some point, and we will be discussing um, heat treatments and different metal properties and different the right steel for the right job in talking blacksmithing tools. Uh, but let me get up into the chat and say hello to people. Curtis, how you doing, man? Trail Dust, what up? Eric, Ben, J Dub, how you doing? NVS Forge, what's up, Envy? Bryson Alden, how you doing, man? Let me see. Dogbone Knives rolled in. Shamrock Forge, of course, is in the chat. Sagi Bottom, I've got your package right here. I'm going to open it. I have been eagerly awaiting that. um, how you doing, John Cat? Chris Schaefer, hey. Michael Robertson, Robert Lonis. I like how the names all kind of flow together. What up, Mike? Drayson, how you doing? Henry St. Street Forge, good morning. How you doing, Insanity? Robert Whitney, Mick Chu, how you doing, man? But yeah, so I believe Bloobs, how you doing, brother? Yep, smoosh that like button and like that smoosh button. I'm gonna go ahead and go over to the that's all in my face. Hold on. Trying to line them up here. Okay. He says he's in. There you are. Okay. So, rolling down Blacksmiths Church. Let me, I've got to organize that a bit better. Wow. That's like all up in my, there we go. All right. Let me go into the settings and find add members. Sam. No. S. Town. There we go. Give Sam Towns here some perms. All right. Alrighty. So, that should allow Mr. Sam Towns. Oh, nice roses there. That should allow Sam Towns to hop in the voice chat. And, yeah. Something seems fuzzy to me. I believe everybody's muted. Everybody muted themselves. Nobody wants to hot mic themselves.
Yeah, that can sometimes be problematic. So. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yeah. Between Sully and I think we both have ruined your rating.
It's all good. Hey, Wayne. Hey, Jeff. Rob here. Rob is here. How you doing? Speargrass, what up? I will say, Sully's quiet. Let me see if I can adjust that. User volume. Send him up to 150. And
how's that?
that should be better.
Yeah, I've just got the mute because I got the grandson running around in the house. Papa, papa, papa. I'm like, I'm busy.
I believe Sam Towns is arranging things. He'll be in. He'll get in. He knows how to get in. He uses Discord. I don't need to worry about Sam. He's awesome. But anyway, hey James Jones, what's up, Morante? Morante, this stream topic today is very, very much based on you and your questions last night, and it's something we haven't really done on this show specifically, at least in a long while, focusing on the discussions of heat treatments, quenchants, various steels, the right steel for the right job, and more on the tool side rather than the blade side. You know, chisels, hot cut chisels, cold cut chisels, you know, this, that, the other thing. I'm sure all that fun stuff. So, awesome. But before we get all jumping into it, SoggyBot, I have been eager for this for all week. I got a package from Joe at Soggy Bottom Forge, and I want to open it. And to Sam Towns, if you're still listening, or if you can hear me or read me or whatnot, yeah. Let me figure out how to open this, and I'll actually post a link to the Discord in here again. Alright, let me try and open this without destroying this letter that you taped to the top. Yeah. It says letter in here, but it's fully taped up. Yeah. Yep.
Good evening.
That sounded familiar. That sounded downright southern.
Morning, Sam.
Yeah, you guys feel free to chit-chat and stuff while I open this. Yeah, this is a community show, not just me. So, hey, Bill Corey.
Yeah, I was just thinking while you're opening that, it's going to be like them Russian stacking dolls, you know, and there's a box inside a box inside a box inside a box.
Right?
I love doing that. It's so much fun.
Yeah. But yeah, so got a box and a note. Sam Towns has joined us in the chat. I can pop that chat up so y'all can see who's all joined us. Us in the chat. Pardon?
Was my playback of the stream, so I can watch the chat.
All right, I found the note. I dug it out, Joe. All right, it says, Yamez, I hope this package finds you in good health and spirits. I saw a live stream a while ago that you wanted dirt from the forge floors. Here's your dirt! Lol. And the small container is from my forge, and it gives the latitude, longitude. Also, you will find a bottle of the Pacific Ocean and a bag of Pacific Northwest Beach with a bonus piece of driftwood. Latitude and longitudes from it. I hope you enjoy. I taped the small container so it won't pop open, but all containers can be opened. Why would I? You got to keep that air and dirt, you know, from its location. Thanks for all you do for the community. Joe from Soggy Bottom Forge. Thank you, man. I haven't really been pushing it actively, but yeah, I do I'm collecting dirt from people's forges and from their areas and all that stuff, and I will be setting up, I guess it's called geocaching or geo something or another. And, you know, setting it up so that I can, nice. Just a little piece of everybody at my place, you know.
Hello to everyone who's saying hello to me. And to
Yes.
Fresnold and Wayne. Hello, everyone.
Oh, vacuum sealed bag or vacuum sealed Gatorade bottle of Pacific water. Get all this stuff open. Anybody I didn't say hi to? Hey, Daniel. Smart and vacuum sealing it, man. I tell you what. Get out of there.
Hey, Blueberries. Hey, Bobby. How you going? It is me.
Yay. I bet that's not healthy to drink.
Probably not.
And then this literally looks like a bag of sand. Let me keep going here. Trying to be relatively quick, but another bag of, oh, it's a piece of driftwood. I got you. Yeah, I love driftwood. That's cool. That's a neat little piece. That's real cool. Thanks, man. And then this is the bag of driftwood sand, or of sand from the Pacific Northwest. I lost my knife. So yeah, we are hopefully discussing, hey RG, metals, heat treatments, and the like. Typically, that applies to blades, but really, oh, that's cool. It's like a black sand almost. I'm used to like these white sands from the East Coast, you know. But that's cool. I'm gonna find some decorative bottles for these. I appreciate the heck out of that, Joe. So, all right. Hey, Donut. Morante last night during my live stream was asking several questions on heat treatment properties or heat treatment of steels. He was actually we corrected him, but he was confusing. He was asking what medium do I use to temper the steel, oil or water, and we kind of corrected him on that nomenclature and brought the invited the topic for today, which is why I personally called the world famous Sam Towns, who is world famous for being a metal nerd. Like he could I think when he's sleeping he doodles the molecular makeup of different alloys in his sleep. I think he's got a tattoo of iron right here, of like the that'd be a good cool tool, having like a periodic table style tattoo of the different alloys and their properties.
Yeah, if I could afford a tattoo.
Everybody go over, you know, when he does his live streams and buy him a coffee and stuff like that, and so he can afford a periodic table of steel alloys.
The full heat treatment charts.
Yeah, a back panel. Or no, cheat sheet right here. Cheat sheet right there.
Yeah, that's right, on my wrist. So I can check it.
Yeah. I believe we can start with a general discussion of it. I know extreme basics about it. I know enough about it to not screw up, but I don't know enough about it to get the most out of my steel. You know?
Right.
Thanks, John. That's my Tinkerbell coffee cup. Hey, Chewy. Like, for example, I know enough that if I'm working with a steel that I haven't worked with before, I know to look into it to see what I would need to do to get the most out of it. I typically use 5160 for punches and chisels, and 4140, 1045, or A33 for my hammers. I don't really get much out of that, or much more away from those steels. But it's good to know that if you come across something that there's more to it than just heat up, dip in a liquid, toss in an oven for 500 degrees for an hour. It's like, depending on the tool you're making, be it blade, axe, whatever, you know, the whole process could be completely different, you know, for the same type of steel, you know, and that's why I brought in the expert.
No, I'm far from an expert, but I'm just a hobbyist with a penchant for spending too much time reading books.
Okay, our resident expert. Yeah. What, should I have gotten Jay Nielsen in here? Give him a call. You know him.
Totally. Yeah.
As close as we can get on short notice, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I'm the bottom of the list expert.
Right.
Someone needs to get Kevin Cashin's phone number.
Yeah. One of these days, man, I want to do like a full on experts panel and get with you, Sam, and you know, some of your contacts that you've made through the Forgecast, and like set up a experts Q&A panel. I think that would be phenomenally awesome.
Yeah.
You know, get some of the experts. But yeah, so if you have any sort of a preamble on
yeah, I just
saw
John Cat mention that John Switzer uses a heat treat app on his phone. I use the same one, which is the Heat Treater's Guide Companion.
Let me see if it's the one that I got.
Yeah, it's HTS,
HTS.
Heat Treating Society's ASM International Heat Treater's Guide Companion.
Yes, absolutely. I
Probably one of the
recommend
most comprehensive apps out there.
It doesn't have A33, but you know. That's
no, it hasn't been updated in a while, so there are a lot of different alloys that are new that haven't been put on that list yet. But yeah, it is fairly comprehensive.
Right.
One of the things you have to be careful with, though, is that a lot of the time it is talking about industrial heat treating. So it's talking about cross sections, you know, in excess of inch square and higher.
Correct. However, that gives you a nice jumping point, right?
Oh yeah. And that's true for most heat treating apps and stuff like that, and any chart that you find will be normally referring to industrial heat treating, which isn't always necessarily true for very fine cross-sectional material like blades, but it's a good jump-off point, definitely.
Yeah, I would just like to point out, Bloob's had a pretty good question here that I have. Says, when using two different metals, how do you determine which method or which to heat treat it? Which, you know, obviously I'm guessing he means, like, say in Damascus, which one do you heat treat for? The, you know, the 15N20 or the whatever 40, whatever your mix is.
Yeah, always go for the faster of the two. The slower of the two. So if you, say, for instance, are doing 1095 and 15N20, 15N20 can quench relatively easily in a medium speed, whereas 1095 is technically a fast speed quench material, but you wouldn't want to quench 15N20 with a fast speed, so you go for the medium speed and you take a hit on hardness, because you do not want to end up with a cracked blade.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just
Yeah,
absolutely. It's you have to you have to know, like, my first, like, oh dang, not every steel is the same, was, I knew how to use and work with 56, no, hold on, 5160.
Howdy, Adam.
Morning, Adam. I knew how to deal with
Evening.
5160, but I still hadn't grasped that, tool steels were different. I figured, oh, tool steels, you just dunk in oil,
Yeah.
and I had ordered half-inch square bar 5160 from a steel supplier that's just down the road, and after much hemming and like they put in the order, supposedly put in the order, and after weeks of them, oh no, it's not here yet. After weeks and weeks of that, they finally called me and said, yeah, your steel's here. I show up and it's a 3/4, a 10-foot stick of 3/4 D2. I go, this isn't what I ordered. They're like, yes, it is. And I go, I didn't even know what D2 is. Why would I order it? And they said, well, you ordered it, you have to pay for it. And it was twice the cost. So I'm like, I'll figure it out. Tool steel is tool steel. Not knowing.
D2 is crazy.
Yeah, and I got it, and then that's when I downloaded the app, I believe because Sam mentioned it, and found out like the insanity that is required to use D2 properly. And this was for oyster knives, and I'm like, anybody want any D2? Because I had no way to work with it. I had zero way to work with it,
Yeah.
So I just cut it up and gave it away. I think Bob got the most of it over at B&B Forge.
Fair enough. Robert, definitely heat treat your 1045 dies for your power hammer. Soft dies on a power hammer don't last long.
Right.
So Metal Blueberries did a follow-up question. So you split this temperature down the middle. So normally if you're making Damascus or any kind of pattern welded material, you're normally going to try and use materials that have similar heat treating characteristics. So for instance, 1084 and 15N20 or 1075 and 15N20, you're going to want to get stuff that is close enough in heat treatment that you're not going to have to worry about that, because if there's severe stress between the two materials, you're just going to cause delaminations and explosions in your blades. So if you're using two materials that are so vastly different in heat treatment, I don't think there's a safe way to heat treat that. I don't know why you would bother at that point. But yeah, most of the time, if you're using simple carbon steels and simple nickel steels, you're not going to worry about the difference in heat treatment because they're very close in their temperatures and all that kind of stuff. The difference comes when you start doing stuff like Sanmai, but in that case, you're normally heat treating for the core, not for the jacket. So,
right. Actually, it brings me a quick side question. It may sound ridiculous, and then I'll jump back into the chat with some questions.
No such thing as a stupid question.
Oh, wait, just wait. So, as some of you know, John Burnell and I have been bandying back and forth with Damascus hammers, and like going on the verge of some ridiculousness. And he's prepping up a billet, and I want to one-up him in project scope, if this makes any sense. However, I am not making a tool out of a specific piece of Damascus that I have planned, so I don't need my low carbon tube or my non-nickel alloy to be a tool steel. So I am thinking of taking strips of 15N20 that I have and mixing them with mild steel. Okay, and forging a billet. And it will be a flat piece. I'm not going into what I'm doing with it because it's going to be a surprise. It's going to be a flat piece. And I would like to know, because I know that when you are making Damascus or pattern welded steel, that, to really make the pattern pop, you quench it, you heat treat it so that it pops. With using mild steel, A, do you need to worry about the heat treatment? And B, do you need to consider the DLAMs when heat treating 15 and 20 with mild steel?
So as far as DLAMs go, probably not, because the mild steel is going to move with the 15 and 20 if the 15 and 20 decides to move during the
Kind of what I
quench.
was thinking.
Yeah, they're not going to move in contravention to each other. I mean, I've made Damascus out of W2 or old file steel and mild steel because they provide pretty decent contrast. The problem you're going to find is that mild steel and 15 and 20 are not going to contrast very well.
Really?
Because mild steel tends to etch quite light anyway, and because when you dunk into acid, the acid is attacking the alloys that have high carbon and high manganese in the alloy, and in both cases, you're not having that in the mild steel, so it's going to get eaten away at a similar rate to the 15 and 20,
So,
and you're not going to get much of a contrast out of it.
so out of curiosity, 4140 is high manganese, right?
4140 is also very high chromium.
Oh, so that'll etch
Yeah.
light as well.
And to do, I could throw in there if you're just dead set on the mild steel, you could do the whole cast powder thing for carbon migration.
Yeah, yeah, you could. Because I mean, the other thing would be if you wanted to do like a low contrast Damascus using mild steel, I would actually go the opposite direction. Instead of having the nickel, go high carbon with a high manganese content, like 1084.
And then mild
Because
steel.
yeah, because then the mild steel will be your light material compared to your dark. As I said, I've done Damascus out of W2 and mild steel to create low contrast Damascus for like more traditional builds, especially if I'm doing like a Sanmai around something.
Okay.
So yeah. Chewy asked how close is the quench methods for 15 and 20 and 5160. They're pretty much identical.
Okay.
Relatively. Like, I mean, there are minor differences depending on the cross-sectional density and all that kind of stuff. But, the long and the short of it is that you can heat treat them both basically the same.
So, Sam, just to clarify for us Damascus noobs in the chat and also in the voice chat, you're saying that mild steel and 1084, 1080-ish will give a decent contrast as opposed to 15 and 20 and mild steel.
It'll give similar, yeah. There'll be similar. There'll be similar contrast. The thing is that because the 15 and 20 resists etch through the nickel content, and the nickel content doesn't really come into its own until it is heat treated. Like the crystallization of the carbon inside 15 and 20 actually shunts the nickel alloy to the outside of the grain boundaries, which is why it resists etch more after heat treatment. It's the same with 1084. The reason it turns so dark is because once the carbon is crystallized, the manganese is shunted to the outside of the carbides, the outside of the martensite carbon areas, boundaries. You know what I'm talking about. And so the acid can get easier access to that alloy. And in the case of the nickel, it doesn't eat it. In the case of the manganese, it loves it. So when it comes to any kind of Damascus, you're normally relying on that martensite transformation to bring the alloy to the boundaries, which means that the alloy is going to then get eaten. Or not eaten in the case of nickel.
Right, okay. Hey, Shane. Hey, Paul. How you guys doing? I believe, so I see a number that I recognize. Morante. Sorry to jump, but the most accessible steel by him is 1020, which to me sounds just a little bit higher than a rail spike. Still a mild steel, but
SAA 1020 is as close to the mildest of mild steel you could possibly get. Like 1018 mild steel is the lowest carbon mild steel you can buy, basically.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what I have around here. That's what's available to me is 1018. So yeah.
Yeah. So A36, which is your standard mild steel available all over the world, sold as structural steel, tends to have between 0.2 and 0.25% carbon, 0.025, sorry. and so it's very low. 1020 is actually lower than you would find in most A36 structural steel. So yeah, not really hardenable to any appreciable degree.
So 1020 is definitely not considered a tool steel.
No, it's a mild steel.
So Morante, what you would want to do is look at for tooling, and he mentioned above that he was focusing more on tongs, hammers, and hinges and such, more traditional blacksmithing projects rather than blades. So yeah, he doesn't really need to go deep into tool steels, but for say hammers and tooling, chisels and such, if you can get your hands on axle shaft, as opposed without being able to get access to brand new steels, axle shafts and such, or drill rod, I believe, for hammers, and
or worst case scenario, if you absolutely have to make your make do, you can look into doing case hardening either by buying some Casenet case hardening compound or doing case hardening at home. Jared Russell actually has a really good video on veteran iron and wood. He actually has a good video of how to do it in your forge at home. So that is another way to get around it. If you're making tools, it's not a big deal. If you're making blades, it's a bit different.
Yeah, blades are a bit, I want to say, less forgiving with the heat treatments because of
very much
thinness. So. Whereas tools, especially tools for hot work, and me and Sully just before the live stream started, where we were chatting that up about hammer drifts and punches and hot chisels and stuff to heat treat or not to heat treat, and it's like the community's split 50-50 on that, and both.
Jesus. Hi, Sam.
So yeah, I'm missing something. Hey, Tim.
Yeah,
Tim rolled in.
So,
hello.
Anyway, oh, Dooley, that's loud.
Hi, Tim.
And so,
how you doing?
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
All good. So we had Chewy ask, would the contrast be dramatic with 5920 and 5160? The answer is yes, but like 5160 is one of those steels that I absolutely hate to forge weld, because anything with high-end chromium, it really doesn't like to forge weld to itself, but it also really doesn't like to forge weld to pretty much anything. I personally have used it in like cleft welds for like axe bits and stuff like that, but anything where you're going to be doing multiple folds or multiple welding passes where you're potentially going to be trying to weld 5160 to itself, you're better off just not.
Yeah, I got really lucky when I first started. I was one of the, I'm talking before I moved my setup indoors, when I was still a barrel forge and a Harbor Freight anvil. I had taken a bit of coil spring, flattened it out, and a piece of racer bearing and flattened it out. So that would be mystery steel, however close to 52-100 and 5160. And I did like a 3 or 4 piece stack and successfully welded them together. Successfully made a small billet.
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible.
Ever, and that was like I'm saying early on, like month 1 of my blacksmithing journey, and never have ever been able to do it again, and so
there's definitely nothing that says that you can't do it, but definitely not the easiest.
Yeah.
So Donut mentioned that the last numbers are points of carbon in the American system, with the 4-digit numbers. Normally, yes, the last 2 numbers are normally indicative of the points of carbon, but not always.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a crapshoot when it comes to that kind of thing.
I'm trying to hover over the names here every now and then so people can see who's in the voice chat, who the guests are. Yeah, as I was going to say real quick, side note, my pressing matters today don't actually start until like noon 30, 1 o'clock. So I am, if this topic goes long, or if it, I'm cool with that. So I'm here as long as you guys need us.
And Robert Lonis, can I heat treat the hammer dies if they're welded to the base plate already? Yep, you can. Certainly can.
Yeah, that's what I did with my. I use forklift tines for my the basic dies that I have, other than other than my fullering die, which I made out of 4140 and a 1045 for a large drawing die, and those are that I believe was 1045, and I welded them to the plate and actually heated the whole thing up with a torch, with my oxyacetylene torch, and then did the quench and all that fun stuff. So yeah, let me see.
Cool.
We're on
so a couple more questions.
Yeah.
Have a lot of 52-100 bearings. What metal would be good to make a popping Damascus? Do you have a good stack of bandsaw blades? Yeah, bandsaw and bearing will make a decent Damascus, depending on the material the bandsaw blade's made out of, because not all of them are made out of 50 and 20, or there's a lot of people who will say they are, but they're probably not. They could be anything from L6 or anything like that, but they tend to be some form of high nickel or high chromium stuff. If the 52-100 doesn't want to weld to it, then it's probably L6. If it does want to weld to it, then it's probably 15 and 20. You'll just have to try it out and see.
Yeah, I've honestly never had any issues. The bandsaw blades that I got were all but short of being, guaranteed 15 and 20. And I've never had an issue welding with those.
Mm-hmm.
Where does everyone find? Okay, go ahead.
Chewy says, so other than 1095 and 1085, which actually is 1084, what do you suggest to get a really dramatic contrast? Honestly, if you're looking for dramatic, 1084 is the best steel out there. With 15 and 20, there is no better steel for contrast. There's a reason that Kyle Royer and a lot of the Mastersmiths these days use 1084 is because it's custom made for it, basically. Especially, Aldo Bruno coming out with his version of 1084, which has a higher manganese content than the old stuff. And that extra manganese just makes it extra dark when you base etch it, either with caustic soda or coffee. So, yeah, unfortunately, there isn't really another steel. 52-100 will etch pretty dark, so will W2, W1. I've heard some people get decent result too, but though they tend to do it with L6 rather than 15 and 20. So it really does depend.
Yeah. But my brain just farted on me. But
metal blueberries. Where does everyone find the metal for forge welding thin enough to do by hand instead of by a press? Honestly, you can forge weld by hand. You can forge 6 mil or 1/4 inch stock pretty easily by hand. You just have to start with a lower layer count. It all just depends on what you've got. I mean, if you're trying to forge weld 2-inch thick pieces together, then probably going to have a hard time without a press. But otherwise, you should be fine.
If you can get them, I love watching Big Dog's Damascus videos because he speeds it up and makes it look so easy.
Yep.
But if you can get the stack forge welded, even if it comes out as a giant billet, you can still work it by hand. I've done it several times.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks. It takes forever, but it is entirely possible.
Oh yeah.
So Jason over at HRJ Forge made a series of videos about how to do multiple layer Damascus by hand by building several small billets and then forge welding 3 or 4 of those together to get a higher layer count. He did it all by hand, and it was pretty impressive. He did a good job. So if you're looking for something, look up HOJ Forge. He's got a nice little tutorial on that.
It's Jason
Yeah, it's a
Crum,
good
right?
trick.
And by the same account, Jared over there at Veteran Ironwood, I mean, like he's currently in a project where he did he forge welded 4 pieces of cable, and then cleaned those up, and then forge welded those 4 pieces together and make a billet. We're talking about like inch and an eighth cable too. So I mean, it's a fairly large billet. So it's you know, by hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
15 and 20 and ADCRV2. It will contrast pretty well. ADCRV2 turns pretty dark from what I've seen. I haven't played with it myself too much because it's difficult to get a hold of it over here. I would be interested to know about the carbon migration between those, because ADCRV2 really likes to get rid of its carbon. That's one of the reasons why it's such a pain to forge, is because it decarbs like hell. But yeah.
Yeah.
And L6 isn't really that tricky to heat treat. It's one of those high chromium, high vanadium steels that really likes to carbide segregate, which is why it's really popular in woodworking tools. But you treat it like 52-100, you should be fine.
Right. Morning, Ethan. Yeah, Sprinkled Donut brought up the stacked 15 and 20 with mower blade. And actually, that's what I did my Damascus hammer out of. And I use it a lot more than I thought I would, and it is holding up very well. It's nice to have a nice light hammer. The contrast between mower blade, talking scrap, and we've got one of the Scrap Kings in the chat as well. Tim, that dirty Damascus. It heat treated properly. It bounces still. It's not delamming, at all. And I'm able to use. It is an extremely usable tool that, hindsight, I could probably put a guarantee on, because it's been treating me well.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the great things, and I think that's one of the things that I would like to suggest people do more often, is if they're trying to make Damascus for stuff, start out, when you're making scrap Damascus, it's perfect for when you want to make like guards and fittings for blades, and for, tools like hammers, and, try and hard face them by forge welding on plates of, either spring steel or file steel, or if you've got some known steel, use that. But instead of going straight for blades, it's a good idea to make tools out of it, because, much like wrought iron, which, I recently made a 3-pound wrought iron and 1084 crosspeen hammer. The wrought iron is always going to have inclusions. It's always going to have minor delaminations and stuff like that in it. There is no with them all. And yet, because of the granular structure running, horizontal in the bar, meaning that, all of the pressure is coming down the ends of those grains, you're not going to have them fall apart. So, in that case, you're probably better off making that kind of thing in the beginning, when you don't know that you've got no inclusions.
Right. Kind of a crossover from the wrought iron and Bryson's comment on heat treating mystery cable, with also a triple crossover with doing dirty Damascus, like Tim did in his dirty Damascus video, where he took all the what were they? They're old wagon wheels or something, old strips from something.
They were barrel bands.
Barrel bands, yeah.
Yeah, and that actually came from that recipe from 1824 in India. They were making faux Damascus to sell to the Britons to make their weapons with. It was pretty funny, but it...
Still doing it these days.
Yeah, I imagine they probably are. It was an interesting recipe, but yeah, it was barrel bands, and they ground up some cast iron into powder and put that between each layer along with a little bit of borax. There was, and then they had two different recipes. One of them was just a faux Damascus thing for a gun barrel, which was a little more flexible, and that it was pretty much just mild steel and the barrel bands basically, and some cast iron. But the other had a higher carbon steel in it, and I actually put some files. And in the descriptor in the document, all they said was a higher carbon steel was used, and they didn't say what it was. So I just picked files, just flat files, and put them in there, and it welded up pretty well. And the one thing that they were really insistent upon in the document was that everything be extremely rusty. And I did a little research on the rust and how the carbon interacted with the oxygen molecules and how that broke down and what it added to the surface. And I really couldn't come up with a conclusion as to what, if anything, that was doing other than creating some sort of a lighter carbon layer around the mild steel. Because the carbon was basically bonding with the oxygen molecules and fading away. So it had something to do with carbon migration through the different types of steel, but I'm nowhere near the level that Sam is on this stuff. So,
well, it's
as far as the metallurgy goes,
much the way that like cable Damascus works. The whole contrast is because of the carbon migration and carbon diffusion between the weld layers, because like normally the material is all the one material when you're talking about cable, and so the main contrast comes at the edges of the weld seams where there's been carbon migrate out of the material, and you've got that lighter material there. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat at the same time.
Tim, I wanted to in that video you did with the all of that, do you recall off the top of your head what the ratio of cast iron powder to borax was? Because in doing other things, I was just kind of winging it, and I couldn't remember what it was.
It was like 30 to 40. It's like a decent amount. Yeah. That's what I randomly remember, but I'm very likely wrong.
Did you hear that one, Tim?
Sorry.
I think we've lost Tim.
All right then.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
There he is.
There you go. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think it was on the first video I did, it was like 15%. I can't remember. I've got it written down. I'd have to go back and look. But on the last one, I dropped it down to 5%. It didn't take much. Wasn't a whole lot of borax in that powder the second time around. But
yeah, because I started out at about 25%. Not for doing that though. I mean, I was shooting for carbon migration, and that seemed to work fairly.
Yeah, and you know what? We got to talk about Roy here, because Roy's correct. You don't need a lot of borax to do forge welds. You get too much, and you're just starting to cause yourself more inclusions, more pockets. That stuff can get trapped.
Yeah.
Not hot enough when you forge weld. One of the things that when folks are doing Damascus of any kind, and like I said, I'm not on the metallurgical level that Sam is, but the fact is that I've forge welded a lot of odd things together in experimentation, and the one thing that's a common denominator is the fact that you use too much borax, you're going to end up with inclusions somewhere that's going to be hard to get out. So it's just not needed. Really, all you're doing is sealing the oxygen from the outside layer. People think, and it does have a boric acid in it that helps to etch and clean the metal, but you don't need that much between the layers. It's just not.
No.
Right. It's way too. People go way crazy with it. One of my videos, I kind of played a little joke, and I'm like, just a little borax, and I put half a box on this thing just to be a goofball, and it all puffed up. And it was fun and all that stuff, but I had a hell of a time getting all that crap out there after that. So
yeah.
No, when I started out making Damascus, I was one of those guys that put way too much borax on my stuff, and I was ruining my forges faster than I could build them.
Oh yeah, it eats them up like crazy.
That was the worst part. Was just like constantly having to repair my linings.
Yeah, I
Wait,
know.
how much borax are you supposed to use?
Not much at all. Like just a sprinkle coating. And
Well,
Yeah,
if
it
you can
depends on the
imagine
size of the billet,
it,
but tablespoon.
yeah.
yeah, you're right, Sam, about that. What I have done in the past, and it's an easy thing to do, is take a mason jar and drill some 1/8 inch holes in the top of it, maybe a dozen 1/8 inch holes,
A salt
and use
shaker.
it like a salt shaker.
That's
Just
Yeah,
brilliant.
shake
yeah,
it
I've
on.
seen that. Good.
I love it.
I recently was blessed with some Sure Weld and Iron Mountain flux from Jared,
Oh.
and they're both easy to apply because they're both anhydrous versions of flux, and you can apply very, very minimal amounts and get a really, really good forge welds. They're really good.
Yeah, I've kind of deconstructed the Iron Mountain, and it's pretty much, as far as I can tell, and all the things that I was able to separate and test out chemically, it's pretty much kind of a cast iron powder. It's got the anhydrous borax in it, and there's another element that I couldn't identify, but I think it's some sort of a sodium. I'm not sure.
You got to taste it to make sure.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah. No, I got that it was probably just like originally I thought it was just going to be anhydrous borax and cast iron powder. It definitely behaves like borax, and the powder keeps it very, very sticky rather than flowing, which makes it not so good for Damascus.
Again, inclusions.
Oh yeah.
See if I can summon Roy.
Trying to summon Roy.
What was I gonna say on the amount of borax? Yeah, you don't absolutely need much because it as it melts, it kind of uses a capillary action and gets pulled into the different voids and crevices and such. So yeah, like you say, a tablespoon would be the max. You know, when I'm doing a Damascus billet, I basically take a spoon, I hold the piece at an angle so that any excess falls back into the dish or falls onto the floor, and I basically just tap it along it so that it's got just a sheen over it, and I do that on both sides and then leave it, and because then as it heats up and melts, it kind of sucks into it.
Yeah.
But borax and beer, no, that was a cheat. If it doesn't work, I'm claiming that's a cheat. That's an empty can of my Arizona Southern Style fresh real brewed sweet tea. # not a sponsor, and some smoked salt. But it looked good. Yeah, I did actually. And what prompted this whole random thing was, hey, Mr. Maker. I took a bit of inspiration from Mr. Big Dog, and while I was at Quad State last year, the Quad Squad get together, I grabbed a piece of it was like 1.25 or 1.5 cable, rusted, sitting in the yard. Did nothing to it, tossed it in the fire, got it hot, hit it hard, and it worked. Actually made a very decent billet. No borax, no nothing, just in the fire, out, hit it with a hammer, put it back in the fire, hit it with a hammer, and then take it out of the fire, and then why did I hit the fire with a hammer? And it worked and actually made one of my better billets of cable. So yeah, like even for something as dirty and nasty and small as cable Damascus, you don't truly need a flux. It just helps.
Yeah, it's base covering at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, you cover your bases eventually. You try and make it as many chances as possible to work.
Yeah.
Chewy asked, is talking about green metal turning wrought iron into blister steel using Tums. which I thought was a hilarious video.
Using
Could you do it with a
Tums.
mail blade? Yeah, the like the stomach upset
Like, I go through a bottle of
lollies
this
or
a
whatever.
day. I got
That's funny. The suppose, and you can expand on that, Sam. Isn't it the calcium that turns into carbonate that infuses itself to the surface, and it'll migrate
Yeah.
like 2 inches in, something like that?
That's
Yeah, pretty much it.
awesome.
You can use pretty much anything that has calcium carbonate or sugar. Funnily enough, will carburize. There was a myth that went around for a while that if you quenched a red hot piece of steel into sugar, it would case harden it, but that's not how it works.
Mm.
But
Sounds
if you
good way to make
do
caramel.
put sugar, like pack sugar around a piece of steel in an enclosed container and keep it at heat for like an hour or two, you will carburize the material because sugar transfers to carbon when it burns.
That's why
Um,
that's why caramel starts with CAR and carbon starts with CAR.
that's it. You cracked the code there, Yana.
Candy coated Damascus,
I love it. Hey Ben.
peanuts and a prize.
As far as doing it to mower blades, I don't know that you would want to. The thing with the problem with case hardening or trying to carburize already carburized steel is that you run the risk of creating cast iron. You run the risk of over carburizing the material. The thing about doing any kind of case carburizing like Green Beetle did is that in order to get the level of penetration you need, like you can get about a millimeter, which is about 40 thousandths worth of carbon penetration after about 45 minutes at soak. But the thing is that the more time you soak, the deeper the penetration gets, the higher the carbon level is closer to the surface. So basically, you want to kind of minimize the amount of carbon you build at the surface, so it kind of becomes this kind of tossing game of how high do I want the carbon level, how deep do I need the carbon. And so normally what you do when you make blister steel is that you would use very thin strips, carburize them quite heavily, and then forge weld them and laminate them a few times in order to diffuse the carbon between the layers, much like with Tamahagane, where they'd use super high carbon stuff with low carbon stuff to get carbon diffusion, which would then create 0.6% carbon roughly. So yeah, the blister steel and shear steel in general was tended to be made slightly higher carbon than you intend and then move it down. But you normally started with steel that didn't have carbon at all. So yeah, it depends.
Sorry, I was lip syncing to Sam to make myself look smart.
I was watching your lips move and going, I'm not sure if I'm just talking over Youngers right now.
No, I was lip syncing to make myself look smart. I'm going to take that clip and I'm going to use it and be like, yeah, I'm smart.
Yeah, because everyone will buy that you have an Australian accent.
Right? Crikey. Not to pull the subject away, Robert Lone is bringing up a good point. Brain overload, must focus.
Yeah, sorry, I can't get
no, and that's why I asked you in today, is because you are such a plethora of information, that it's like if anybody has any specific questions, you could probably go file found, ramble. You're a machine with this stuff. But on the subject of that, one steel that I know that you haven't really worked with, mainly because it's not really available in your area, is A33. It's something that I am mildly familiar with because I make my hammers out of it, and I know that you just received a 3/4 by 5-inch bar stock of A33. Have you played with it yet?
I have actually. This week's video is actually me making a jeweler's hammer out of a piece of it.
Cool. I knew you'd come up with something useful for it. You know.
Oh yeah, big time. I needed a jeweler's hammer, so I desperately wanted to play out with the A33. So I decided that it was a perfect opportunity to try it out.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm sure you had to do
very
your fair
interesting
bit of,
material.
Yeah, I'm sure I tell people all the time, this stuff moves like butter. Like, it is one of the easiest metals, period, that I've ever forged. You know.
It's really funny. Like I heard that over and over again, that A33 was insanely easy to move. And then the first heat that I had, I pulled it out of the forge at like a low orange on the first heat, and it moved like D2. Like, it was so hard to move under the hammer. It was unbelievable.
You needed to go just a little bit higher on your temp, and it like reaches. I know what you're talking about, because you know, I find that when I'm punching, it reaches like a critical temperature that it's like still stiff, because it is a very sturdy and hardy steel. And then once it reaches that critical point, then it's like, oh, I can practically take and go like this with it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely, I threw it back in, and I was kind of like, I'm not sure that I'm just doing something wrong, or if I'm just weak today. But I threw it back in, let it get up to about welding temperature, and then, you know, pulled it out, and it was like forging wrought iron, and I was going, okay, now you're working
with A33. And real quick,
that's it.
John Cat, yes, Tim has made bacon Damascus. Damascus, yes. So of course there's bacon Damascus in the world because of, you know, the wonderful Tim. But yeah, that A33, unfortunately my supplier of it, my guild supplier of it, said he will not be ordering any more. So I believe he only has about 6 or 8 more foot of hammer stock, and I want to say 3 or 4 more 4-foot bars of the 3/4 stock. It's just it doesn't sell fast enough for him. I'm like one of the only people that buy it. So yeah, that's going to be hard to come by in the future for me. But
yeah, well, I mean, it's a lot harder to get hold of him.
Yeah, one thing that I did with that 3/4 Fludagon stock was, sorry, I'm trying to keep half an eye on the chat too here. Pictures popping up. Cardsmith, nice stuff. Is I took, and the reason I had the 5-inch lengths was I cut them in half to 2.5 inches, and then forged tong-held punches, fullers, you know, such as that, you know, chisels and stuff, tong-held tooling, and dang it, if it's just they work so well, I don't use them near enough. But
no, that's a good idea. I don't use a lot of tong-held tooling, so you know, it's definitely something I've looked at, but I haven't got around to yet.
The reason I went with tong-held tooling with the A33 is because at 3/4 of an inch, those bar stocks are $1 an inch, you know, and so it's a fairly expensive steel. So trying to make the most of it, instead of taking and making an 8-inch chisel, handheld chisel, or handheld punch or something, I cut it in half to make 2 tools out of 1 bar, you know.
Yeah, good plan.
Yeah, and
I'll probably end up making another jeweler's hammer out of the other bit that I've got.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you know, yeah. By all means, it's like I think I've only heard of one person ever cracking A33, and I wish I could go into more of the metallurgical detail of it, but it's very kind of hidden as to its ingredients list.
Yeah, I tried to do some research on it when I got that piece off you, and yeah, it's very hard to find definitive, you know, metallurgical data on it.
Yeah,
they're very secretive. But yeah, no, it works really well. I actually did, for the first time ever, I actually did a differential hardening on a hammer. I used my torch to heat up the face and the peen to get the quench done, because I knew I wasn't going to be tempering it, so I figured I'd, you know, leave it middle soft if I could.
Yeah, I'm at
Although I
70.
did find that it stays pretty friggin' hard even if you try and normalize it.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it definitely it holds its temper it holds its heat treatment very well.
Oh yeah,
And
big time.
with it being a water quench steel, if you're using a punch and it does get hot, quench it in water, it's back to hard.
Yeah.
It hardens very easily. What I do with my hammers, my full size hammers with it, is I will have one face in the heat. When I do my first face, I do one face in the heat, get it up to its quenching temperature, quench it, shake, cool the whole billet down, and then flip it around, put the other end in, and then I have a squeeze bottle of water that I keep the opposite or the already heat treated face wet. Basically, anytime if it's dry, I squirt water on it and keep it from keep it moist so that it doesn't not that I'm worried about, you don't need to do that, but it's just that little extra that I do just to ensure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Chewy asked, how would W1, 15 and 20 or ADCRV go? Yeah, either W1 or ADCRV2 with 15 and 20 would provide a pretty decent contrast. I'd say the ADCRV2 would probably provide a bit better contrast than the W1, but W1 will provide a decent contrast if you want it. And as far as Crawford asks, with the expense would Joe Vandersteeg method of forge welding the A33 to a handle steel work? I haven't actually seen anyone do any forge welding with A33, and I don't know because I've never tried it myself.
Forging what now?
Forge welding A33 to anything.
Yeah, okay, so in the product blurb for it on the Atlantic Steel website, and I have heard people welding with using welding it to things. It supposedly welds very easily using like actual welding, and I have heard, haven't tried, but I have heard that it welds very, like, has the potential to forge weld to dang near anything fairly easy. It's like it's a great steel. I mean, I have had zero problems at all. Like I said before, I've only known of one person who has broken or cracked A33 during heat treat. And to this day, I don't know how he did it. That would be Hans Groff. He was making a small jeweler's hammer and a repoussé hammer or something like that, and it cracked along the face, and it's like.
See, now you've said that, I'm gonna have to make myself a small hatchet and do a forge welded A33 edge billet, edge bar.
Yeah, I'd like.
I think I could do that.
Another thing I'd like to know is how it etches, because it doesn't have any ingredients list. I'm calling it an ingredients list because why not?
Yeah, it doesn't have an alloy list. Yeah,
there's no spec sheet for it for its alloy content. I'd love to know how it etches because.
Ooh, that's a question. I should cut a slice off and send it to my material testing guys.
Yeah, dang it! If I can't, if I don't want to make an A33 / something Damascus hammer. However, the fact that it's a non-temper steel may make it very difficult to heat treat in a pattern welded billet.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be the issue. I reckon I could get away with making like a mild steel-bodied axe with an A33 edge because I wouldn't have to worry about tempering the mild steel.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, maybe A33 with mild steel would work, but then you wouldn't be able to harden it.
Yeah.
Sam, you could also do A33 with raw iron.
True.
A33 face. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, maybe I'll do a wrought iron axe with an A33 edge. That'd be good.
Yeah, absolutely. I would start with doing like a lap weld, doing a nice solid lap weld of A33 to mild steel, wrought iron, etc., and then doing the quench to see if the weld pops before going through the effort of making faces and hammer and going through all that, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to work out something that I can do with the very minimal amount I have left.
I will try and get some more to you, and anybody else there who has access to A33, send it over to Sam Towns for testing and research.
Or you can just do the research and testing yourself. You don't have to send it to me.
That's true.
As much as I appreciate it, you guys can have fun with your A33. You don't need to send shit to me. It's fine. I've been very fortunate to have some people send a lot of stuff to me, and I'm very happy with that. But
hey, Alpha. Yeah, I got several distinguished guests today. You know,
more than just me. We got Tim in here.
Going from the bottom of my list up, I've got and Tim's throwing video up. Right on. Hey, Tim.
How you doing?
I got Speargrass, I got Sam Towns, I got Solbert from Shamrock Forge, I got J-Dub, Jeff Woodring, Chris Schaefer, and Big Dog himself. He disappeared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's okay. I'm working on something else. I'll be back with you in a minute.
I got your back, Jack.
Chewy asked, would A33 make a good blade? From what I can tell from the hardness on the hammer that I just made, I reckon it'd make a pretty decent blade.
I wonder how its edge retention would be. Now, that's
what I want to find out.
The reason I bring that up is I did make I was talking about the tong-held chisels that I made with it, and I made a cutting chisel, not a hot cut chisel, or not like a, but like a for marking the hot steel and chiseling into hot steel, I don't know why, I don't know if my geometry was wrong or what, but the edge got kind of, not dull, but it kind of pitted itself, and it was really weird, and I ended up, because I used that less, I more use a slitting punch than a slitting chisel, and that was my intention for it, was for making bottle openers. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't nothing to me. I just went, screw it, grind it flat, give it a little bit of a slitting slot punch geometry, and it works fantastic. But that was an edge being used on hot steel with hitting with a hammer, so that may have caused the issues. As a blade steel, I don't even know.
Well, that's what I want to find out.
Absolutely. And for the record, if you are interested in purchasing some more lengths of that 3/4 bar stock, I absolutely can get you a quote and supply you with some at cost. Basically no middleman. Basically, what I would pay for it plus the shipping that it would cost to send to you. Just to be that, to get some into your hands to play with. Because I would try the blade thing, but I am not a blade maker, so I wouldn't even know where to begin for geometry testing and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
So if you are interested in another bit of that, let me know on the side, and I can have my guy call my guy.
I'll have my guy call your guy.
Yeah.
Morante, temperability is the ability of steel to form martensite. So technically that's hardenability. So tempering is the process of reducing hardness while increasing toughness. So relaxing the crystalline structure of martensite. So when you're talking about temperability, technically all steels are temperable, not all steels are hardenable. So it's a hardenability is the ability of a steel to form martensite.
Yeah. The actual process, the start to finish process for heat treatment would be, once you're finished forging your item, you would normalize it, heat it up, cool it down, or let it air cool, heat it up, and do that a couple times, give it a kind of a cycle. And then you would bring it up to your critical temperature of whatever alloy you're working, and then quench it in oil, water, Parks 50, whatever, whatever the quench medium is.
Yeah.
And clean it up, and then from that point put it in a tempering oven. And that, say for example, I know you don't temper A33, but it's the one that I know the numbers off the top of my head. With a simple quench for A33, you can get 52 to 56 Rockwell just with a quick water quench, quick cold water quench. You can get higher than that with like cooled jet water and all that stuff. I believe you can get up to 62. But then you would take that, it's at its ultimate hardness, Rockwell hardness, and you put it in the oven and you temper it back. And you don't do this with A33, just an example. You temper it back, and it reduces that Rockwell down to where you want it, to be specific for the tool and its purpose.
Yep.
Yeah. And
that's another interesting question.
Huh?
What would, of course, A33 being a water tempering, a water quenching steel, which obviously means it's a fairly fast quench. Wonder what it would do in brine.
See ya, Chewy. I was actually thinking that myself, just then, Adam. Great minds think alike.
Brine is a bit faster than water. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the reason brine is faster than water is simply because it doesn't have a steam jacket, doesn't create a vapor jacket.
Right.
So, I don't know, it's worth a try. I think I have enough to make 2. I might be able to stretch it out to make 2. I'll have to. I'm just playing with ideas in my head right now.
Sure. And as I said, if you need more, hit me up.
Oh yeah, we'll do. But I'm always looking to stretch the material that I have as far as it'll possibly go.
Absolutely.
See you later, Chewy. I'm sorry if we missed that.
Adios, Chewy. Hearts and health, buddy.
Oh, that's a dangerous question, Robert. What is my take on Super Quench? What I want to say is not good for YouTube.
Let's act like it's a Teletubby.
It's horse pucky, basically. Basically, Super Quench doesn't really necessarily do anything faster than brine does. Like, the whole idea behind brine is that the salt breaks down the surface tension of the water. So it completely negates the surface tension of standard still water. And so, therefore, it doesn't form that vapor jacket. Instead, it simply immediately sucks the heat out of something because there's no surface tension. Whereas with Super Quench, you're adding, various soaps and stuff like that. All that soaps are supposed to do is break down fats or, lower surface tension, which is what the salt is already doing. So basically, it doesn't do anything beyond brine, and if a material doesn't hold enough carbon to harden, then it doesn't matter how fast you cool it down. You could literally go from 1500 degrees Fahrenheit into liquid nitrogen. It wouldn't help you.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, I don't think Super Quench is a thing. I know that there are people who've tried to sell it as, being a thing, but I don't believe it. It's not metallurgically sound in its reasoning.
Well, I'd like to see somebody try to defeat the Leidenfrost effect going into liquid nitrogen.
Yeah,
right.
It would be interesting to see. Certainly.
See, yeah, it's that goes into something we've actually talked about on the show before, and that I believe Sam and Alex have done several videos on before. And I believe you guys were planning a whole series on it. Was myth and basically
forging myths, yeah.
Forging myths, the Mythbusters for blacksmiths.
Pretty much.
Where you take all these myths, the magnetic north, the anvil pointed this way, the only quench on a full moon myth, the super quench, the case hardening, all those things that is just like overspewed and regurgitated knowledge that, it's like nobody nowadays has really put to the scrutinized test, as far as I'm aware of. And solving the myth of preheating the anvil, which Roy did in a live stream, and I still but it'd be interesting to see on the Super Quench, because there are so many people that swear by it, dead set, left, right. You can give them a chart saying that this does not work, and they will say, "Well, I've done it." Like I saw railroad spike thread. I saw somebody bring up the rote, railroad spikes don't harden. And the guy turned around and said, these are basic railroad spikes quenched in brine. And he took a 52 Rockwell scratch tester and scratched them. And it's like, okay, it's...
Well, I mean, there are lots of people who will like to say things as being true without evidence.
Exactly.
The thing is that there is cases for railroad spikes aren't regularly as hardenable as carbon steels, right? So that as a general statement works because it's true. Whereas saying no railroad spike can harden is complete crap, because various railroad spikes are made out of various alloys, and there's no way to justify that as being a general statement.
You cannot prove a negative.
Yeah, exactly right. And the thing is that there's so many people out there who will tell you cannot do something, or something definitely works purely because they've heard it from someone else.
Yeah, it's the myth, mob's myth. There's a Dunning-Kruger effect, I think is what it is. It's if it's said enough times, it's believed by the masses.
Or am I not
Didn't we just have a president like that?
Oh, we're not. But no, it's the concept of if it's been spoken as rote long enough, those who don't know will believe it and pass it on as truth to more people who don't know, and so on and so forth, to the point where it passes from myth to legend to truth to a known fact that has never been proven.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the time, it's not even that it's said often enough. It just has to be said from people in the right position. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I constantly talk about not taking everything I say as rote, is that despite the fact that I'm online and I'm a personality and I speak with, with authority on some subjects and stuff like that, and I've done a lot of reading and that kind of thing, I try to never state things as true fact unless I have experience in it, unless I've, ratified that with multiple other people. But also, what I say to be true now may not be true in, a year's time when they find out a different way of doing things.
Absolutely.
So one of the big problems is that we get a lot of people who are in these really high positions, these really, well-respected positions, passing on these kinds of falsehoods. Without knowing, they're not doing it on purpose, but they pass on the stuff that they heard from people that they believed. And because they've got such a large audience and they're expected to be, in a position of, authority over other people, people just take what they say as rote. And I've met people who, hold the title of Master Bladesmith who have told me stuff that is factually wrong.
That can be proven factually wrong.
Scientifically wrong.
But because they passed the class, they stand by their statement, no matter how many times you prove them wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where, just because someone holds a position of authority or, holds a title like master or something like that, does not necessarily mean that everything that comes out of their mouth is true.
I was actually at a hammer-in with my guild. I was actually, somebody walked up to me, picked up my hammer, and basically, A33, this steel is crap for hammers. Like, because I'm not going to, name drop anybody. I'm not going to put anybody to shame. Those who know me and have discussed, because it threw me. It was basically, a guy walked up and told me my hammer was crap, and that I need to do this, and this, and if I don't do this, this, and this, and this, it's a crap hammer, and I shouldn't be making blah 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 blah, and even Brent Bailey says that A33 is a horrible steel, and it's like, no, he doesn't.
Since when?
Said person he is quoting the Rote from is the number one authority on hammers and blah blah blah, and A33 makes a terrible hammer because it work hardens, and once it 90% of the time it'll shatter, and it's like,
well, I mean,
he's like, there's tons of videos all over you, and he couldn't provide any evidence, whereas I provided the spec sheet, not the material, the ingredients list spec sheet, but like the purpose of this steel. This steel was created for these purposes: striking tools, sharp tools, and such. And the guys like, oh, that's wrong. I'm like, that's from the manufacturer's website. Well, that's wrong.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that I find incredibly important is personal integrity and honesty. If you are corrected on something, like I regularly get people who will comment on something that I've said and go, actually, you're wrong, and here's why, and they'll, thanks James Jones for the super chat.
Thank you
for supporting
James
this
Jones.
community. But I'll get corrected on something that I've said on my podcast, or on my channel or something like that. And if they can provide evidence, that shows that I was factually wrong, I will just admit it. Because at the end of the day, there's no point in holding on to something that's false. If you want to learn.
Believe me, I'd rather be proven wrong and grow than assume I'm right and others are wrong and stall and falter.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who listens to the Forgecast will occasionally hear me catch myself when I say something and it comes across as me saying a factual statement. But then I'll go, I'll immediately stop myself and say, well, actually, this is just pure personal opinion. This is where I got my information from. And if you have evidence to the contrary, please send it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to learn. And that's the only way we can.
Speaking of the Forgecast, that awesome interview with Kat. That was
it was pretty good.
Awesome. That was fun. You guys sounded like you had a blast with that.
Yeah, no, it was good fun. It was good fun. She did really well. Nervous as hell, but she got through it, and it was really fun.
Random tangent.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, I think all of us, I really think all of us, and this is one of the things that makes the community great, is most all of us aren't looking to posture or anything like that. If somebody tells us beyond a reasonable doubt that, hey, what you are saying is wrong, at the very least we'll double check ourselves and go through, okay, all right, am I wrong? You'll try and grow from the criticism, and it's the select, it's a small percentage of the community that doesn't do that, that says, no, I know in my gut that I'm right. I don't need to have proof. I am right. And that, while irritating when it happens, doesn't happen enough to make the community a difficult community. So
no, of course not. And you're always going to have those kinds of characters in any form of community that you have, especially a creative community.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that at the end of the day, you either are going to learn or you're not. And if you're not interested in learning, then there's no point in having the conversation.
Thank you, Ethan. Right. Yeah.
Cheers, Ethan. I do love. You did mention earlier when the person was saying about H13 work hardening. We actually had that sent into the Forgecast as a myth a while back. about certain steels not being good for tools because they work harden, and I had to point out that literally every metal on the planet work hardens.
Yes, absolutely. that was, and to be fair, I was talking about A33. The person in question walked up to my demonstration anvil. I was actually in the process of teaching a couple other guild members how to do some stuff, and like in the middle of an explanation, grabbed my hammer and just went on a tirade about how horrible A33 is. If I said H13, I meant A33. And
no, you said A33.
Yeah, so. and Mr. Schaefer, you are correct that said person also said the same thing about H13. Again, I'm not name dropping. I'm not shaming. I'm not calling anybody out. The person has their reasons, what have you. The people in question are excellent blacksmiths. There's no doubt about that at all. It's just a matter of going into that point of, what, this is his opinion of this specific steels, and he mentions it to his followers and those who hang off of every word as rote gospel truth. And when you going back to when you're in a position of, even me with my, that's why I constantly tell people, it's like I am I'm at the very, very much beginner stages of this. I'm constantly learning, and and it's like, so when somebody, people would still consider me somebody to go to for information. I'm the first one to say, I don't know that. Here's somebody who does.
That's the best way to be.
But the point is, people who are in a position often, without even realizing it, their followers or their fans will quote what they say as gospel truth, and anybody who says otherwise is completely wrong and on the wrong team and blah blah blah. And it's like first off, the etiquette, don't walk up and grab somebody's hammer while they're in the middle of a demonstration and go off in a tangent about how horrible the hammer is, especially if it's a fresh made hammer that I was showing off.
Yeah.
So just for the record, that was, and I still maintain to him, and he is still yet to, because he is in my guild, and I believe he watches my show, if only to throw the thumbs down. I still maintain to him, if you're out there and listening and you hear this, I'm still waiting on a link to these myriad of videos of A33 hammers shattering like you say they do. Show the proof. Show your work.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it. I mean, I love whenever I hear someone say you can't do something, because the first thing that happens after that is someone does it.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Well, yes, I can.
Yeah. Now, for the record, and you guys know me, I'm a nice person. I don't like talking smack. I don't at all. The guy in my guild, he is a decent bladesmith. He can move metal pretty well. He does know what he's doing. He's not a bad person within that account, or a bad blacksmith. But one, it's like he's got, he's sitting there swinging a 8-pound crosspeen, while making a blade this big. It's like, and so, and somebody said something that reminded me of that, and I'm like,
yeah. No, actually, on a little bit of a tangent there, I've seen recently some a couple of people in fairly high positions in the community talking about using larger hammers, and the necessity of using larger hammers, and performing ridiculous acts of forging beauty in 5 seconds. it drives me mental when we put these like limitations on what you're a good, what makes a good smith and what makes a bad one.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
exactly. It's and that goes into and this all just to remind the topic. This is still on topic. It's the right steel for the right job, and discussing how what you say about one thing can change the way other people feel about it. But yeah. No
Sorry,
one way is right or
took
wrong.
you off topic.
Yeah, it's a tangential topic.
I'm good at tangents.
Oh, me too.
So it also comes down to the right tool for the right job. Like you were saying about the 8-pound hammer. I've had the privilege of working with Sam side by side, and things that Sam can do with larger hammers, there is no hope in history of me being able to do that same sort of thing, simply because I don't have the muscle capacity or the sheer size that Sam has to be able to do that.
Sam is,
so I've got to find a different way of thinking the same, like just doing this, getting the same outcome with a different set of tools, because I simply can't use the tools that he can use.
First Sam held our hearts, then he held the door.
I got a question about that. How do you so I don't forge all day every day or anything like that. I don't have to like save my arm or what have you. I might go out there and spend 2 hours working on something, or 3 hours. And sometimes you look at a piece of steel you got to move out. This is just coming from my own personal experience. And I go, gosh, it's going to take me, with my 2-pound hammer, it's going to take me 8 or 9 heats to do this. And what's that, 30 minutes? But if I use that 8-pound hammer, I can get all the way there in 2 heats. And granted, my arm's going to be a little bit wobbly afterwards, but so it's a 6 1, half a dozen the other. I mean, what do you guys think? That's the way I look at it.
The way if I can cover that real quick on my opinion, that just like you can't say, oh, you can't use a lighter hammer, you got to use a bigger hammer. You can't also say you can't use a bigger hammer, you got to use a lighter hammer. The right tool for the right job. If I want to move like a 1-inch piece of steel and draw it out quickly, I will use a larger hammer to get it to the rough dimensions of where I want, and then I'll switch to a lighter hammer to even it out.
I have a question. I have a real quick question. If hammer size is a limitation for being a good or bad smith, why did they invent power hammers?
Hey man, the guy with the biggest power hammer is the best smith, apparently.
Apparently.
But in my work, I do a lot of forging, and I forge on various sizes of stock and shape of stock and all that kind of stuff. I have 6 or 7 hammers in my rotation that range from 16 ounces through to 8 pounds as a single hand hammer, and then I have my 10, 14, and 25 pound sledgehammers. But the thing is, the hammer is the hammer is kind of dictated by the job. When I'm driving drifts in a hammer, I don't want to be using my 2-pound hammer because it's going to take me multiple heats, like multiple more heats to drive that drift than if I use my 8-pound. But I'm also not going to use my 8-pound hammer as my daily driver.
Right. I use a 4-pound for my drifts.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I use my daily drivers. The 2 hammers that I keep switching back between is my Bob View 2.5-pound diagonal peen and my Charming Hollow Forge 3-pound straight peen. And then, of course, I use my 2.5-pound English Cutler's hammer for all my beveling. But they're all, in that 2.5, 3-pound area, and they do what they need to do. The only time when the bigger hammers come out is when I need to move some big stuff. I've recently seen a video that got passed around all over the place, and probably you guys have seen it, of that guy using the 25-pound dumbbell. It drives me batty, like the idea that makes you a rough and tough, awesome blacksmith.
It's that machismo
swinging
thing because he can doesn't mean you should.
That's it.
Because he can doesn't mean you should.
It's the most inefficient way of forging. The thing is, I can do the same amount of work with a 2-pound hammer swinging quickly as he would be able to do with his 25-pound dumbbell, because he wouldn't only be able to get 1 swing per minute. So it's one of those things.
And
Where
also
you
kind of
gotta-
think what he's been doing as well there, because I mean, like for me, and I was actually having this conversation with a couple of business like earlier on tonight, is most people that have followed me and stuff like that know that last year I developed tennis elbow because I was death gripping my hammers. So I don't using a heavier hammer now is something that I try to minimize doing in order to avoid aggravating that pre-existing injury. So you've got, that's another thing that comes into account when you're thinking about hammer sizes and what you're doing with your hammers, and of course your hammer handle sizes as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of weight in the hammer is immediately going to put more weight on your joints, and as Donut was saying, you got to keep your meat power hammer in check, which is a weird phrase to say, but
you gotta leave it to Duncan for weird phrases.
Yeah,
Like, did those
but,
words just come out of my mouth?
But it's true. Like, the motion that we go through swinging a hammer is already putting stress on the joints. The more weight you have on your hand, your arm is just a lever. And the lever is leaning on 3 separate joints, your wrist, your elbow, and your shoulder. And the more weight you have in that hand for longer periods of time doing those motions, the faster those joints are going to wear out.
Mm-hmm.
It's the difference between opening and closing a door on its own and then hanging off the door and opening and closing it. Those hinges are going to wear out a lot faster. So, yes, you can look all manly and beefy swinging a giant 10-pound single-handed sledgehammer, but at the end of the day, you're going to be out of work in 10 years' time while I'll still be going.
Well, and here's another thing. Running on that topic, okay, on that video, he made an axe using a 25-pound dumbbell, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The dude looks like a bodybuilder, he looks like a bodybuilder. However, he did that short video, and I don't know the guy, never talked to him, never seen any other videos of him, but I can almost with a good, 75% probability tell you that is not his normal forging habit. That he did that video
I would say
specifically for the shock value, for the hey, look what I can do value, which is all well and good, but when people see that and go, that's how you forge, sure, I can take and make a, and I have an 11-pound hammer on a short stubby handle that several times during especially older live streams that I would pull out, mainly because I don't know where it is anymore. Drink, I lost a tool. I'm not even in the shop. That I'll bust out and I'll use every now and then for the showmanship of it,
Oh, yeah.
But would I use that to forge an everyday thing? No. No. And I doubt that he does either.
Yeah, I mean, I've occasionally on live streams picked up my 10-pound sledge and started swinging it around, but it's not a good idea. Not for long term.
It was probably one of those things where a bunch of mates got together and go, wouldn't it be funny if you tried to forge something with the dumbbell?
Well, it's funny because that's not the first time or the last time he's done it. I ended up tracking him down, and he's actually got multiple videos of him doing it. In various situations, from forging blades out to drifting handles and all that kind of stuff. So it's become his brand. And the problem with it is that it displays, and as Yamez says, people are going to look at that, especially people who don't know any better, and go, oh yeah, well that's obviously, a more efficient way of forging, which is just not. It's why I have an issue with some smiths that, advocate for, really, really heavy hammers and forging, really fast. Like, you have to be, you have to get this done in 1 heat. You have to get this done in 2 heats. They talk like you're not a valuable smith unless you can work like a production smith in the late 1800s. Like, you're supposed to be making 2 gross of blades a day. But I think we've moved past that as a craft. Most of us are hobbyists, and even us professionals don't really work to that standard.
Right.
I don't really think that it's a standard, though. I believe that
Mm-hmm.
if you're moving that quickly and moving metal that hard, that fast, you're not doing any favors for the metal. And
Probably not.
there's something to be said about mass acceleration and leverage. There's a lighter hammer at the end of a little bit longer handle. The acceleration that you're able to achieve is going to exert as much pressure as a hammer 3 times its size, being moved slowly and at half the strikes per minute.
Right.
There's a balance there that people don't understand. They see a big beefy guy with a dumbbell in his hand beating on some metal, and they think, oh yeah, this is great, he made an axe. Well, he did a 59-second video of himself beating on a piece of hot metal and then showed an axe, is what he did.
Yeah.
So to get what he got out of that it's not, this is another myth.
Yeah, exactly.
Just have to say
You don't know. You don't know.
So yeah, if you look at, even if you're a dummy like me and you look at some of the basic science of how it works, I mean, I balance out really well at about a 2.5 pound hammer. That's where I work.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty much standard.
Yeah, and I work well at that. I can go all day long with that. But it's how long would you last if I went to an 8-pound hammer all day, every day? I mean, I wouldn't be smithing now at my age.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with my 2-pounders.
Yeah.
I'm happy with my 2-pounders, and while I don't, other people, I've put out several, and I have yet to receive. The only complaint I've ever received from any of my hammers was, can you change the handle up? And I immediately did.
Well, they're made out of A36, and that stuff shatters like crazy. I don't know what the heck you think you're doing.
It does. It's terrible.
But absolutely, yeah.
You might as well be making them out of 52-100.
Oh yeah. Get a barrel full of large 3-pound ball bearings or roller bearings and use a hydraulic press to make about 100 hammers, and then throw some poplar on them for a handle and send them out to the world. But yeah, no, it goes all the way back to what we discussed in the beginning. Using the proper steel for the proper steel for its application, and knowing the not so much limitations, but knowing the properties of said steel in its finished state. In its hardened, tempered, and ready to go state.
Yeah. So I had a question when you get done there, Giannis. Never mind.
Yeah. I was just going to say, a tool steel is not an all-encompassing thing. A tool steel is a generic term for a steel that is used for tooling. Just like a quenchant is not an all-encompassing thing, water or oil. The different tool steels, just like the different quenchants, have different applications, whether it holds an edge, is made for striking, is made for abrasion resistance, like files and such. It's all, you need to know the steel, need to know the use of the tool, so you know what steel to use, and then how to forge, heat treat, and present the tool properly.
I have a question for Sam, kind of regarding that. Well, maybe it's not regarding that, but it is tool steel related. Would air hardening steels make good blades or no?
Well, I mean, yeah, A2 is quite a common air hardening tool steel that is used for blades. I actually have an A2 hunting knife that I really like. So yeah, absolutely, air hardening steels can be used as blades. It depends on the air hardening steel, of course, because like H13 and S7 are both air hardening, but they're fairly low hardness air hardening steels. They're not designed for edge retention or wear resistance. They're designed for either heat resistance or shock resistance. So it does depend on the steel, but yeah, a lot of air hardening steels are useful as blade steels.
And then Tim had something to say, and then I'll get to a question Jeff had about my hammers. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay. Yeah. So, just to sort of set this up, there's a lot of smiths out there in the world who are adamant about using new known steels for tooling, knives, things like that. And I get that, especially if it's your profession, you know.
Yeah.
Although I've seen a lot of bladesmiths make things out of, scrap metal, things that are sort of semi-known to them. If you use a leaf spring to make a knife, you're going to be in the ballpark if you treat it as if it's a particular type of steel, although different manufacturers in the world of spring steel add their own, they have their own recipes and their own alloys in these things. So what this is all coming to is that I have pretty much grown up as a smith. I worked, my original guy that taught me back in the 70s, Fred, he was an awesome guy, but he did a lot of wrought iron restoration. We never did anything big. We never did anything that required a swedge block or any of that sort of thing. But he was big into the scrap metal. And it was easy for him mostly because mild steel could replicate the wrought iron that he was repairing. And it wasn't too bad. You could make it blend pretty well. And the thing is that when he did need to make a tool, a punch, a chisel, a square punch, that kind of thing, he had one go-to material, and I find it still very useful to today, but I do not know what the alloy is. And you can find one in the trunk of every car. It's your lug wrench. And they're an awesome steel, and I've made many punches, drifts, chisels. I've always quenched them in oil. And I believe that they're probably water quenchable because I don't think the steel is all that hard. But just wondering, have you ever used a tire iron in any tool making? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I actually had the opportunity to do a whole bunch of material testing with a company called Elmats here in Australia. That does spectrographic analysis of materials, specifically ferrous metals. And I had a whole bunch of scrap that I wanted to get tested, and they were basically doing it for free as part of a deal with me over some scrap steel that they were selling. And actually, one of the pieces that I had tested was an old tire iron that I had been given because I just wanted to find out. And the one I had was 4140. So yeah, obviously a usable tool steel that's used in punches and all that kind of stuff. It was fairly similar to 4140 in its alloy content. So yeah, I mean, there's a chance. Unfortunately, like one of those things that each tire iron made by different companies is going to be probably a different alloy or whatever. But any tool that's required to provide torque or shock is normally going to be of some form of hardenable material.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so yeah, it's definitely a usable form of round stock, much like coil spring and stuff like that. And the thing about using like known steels for tools and stuff like that, I'm less about the tools unless it's making hot work tools for punches and stuff for the press, in which case I want to use hot work steel. But for all my chisels and punches and stuff like that I use by hand, I make them out of coil spring or or out of old car axles and stuff, because who wants to spend hundreds of dollars on steel that's going to end up in crap chisels you're only going to use once or twice.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I definitely don't hold to the should completely avoid scrap at all times. The one time where I believe that we should be careful about scrap is when we're selling stuff.
Yes.
And that only comes down to at least advertising that it's made out of scrap rather than telling people it's made out of something it isn't.
Mm-hmm. Don't make a 5160 knife out of coil spring and say it's 5160.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's made out of coil spring.
It's where it comes down to the integrity thing that we were talking about before. If you don't know, just say I don't know, and at least the customer knows that you're being honest and they're getting something that's unknown.
And pay attention to your customers too. Like pay attention to your customers. Like when they whether they have praise or concern or questions, be transparent. Like to segue that, because I would never, like the Damascus hammer that I made. People were asking me if they, people were emailing me, messaging me, they wanted to buy it, and I'm like, I'm not selling this, not because I want to keep it myself, but because I can't put a guarantee on it, because it is made out of mystery steel. And so it's like, there's no way I'm going to send out something that I can't guarantee, unless you I understand that this is blah, 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 so transparency in that. And answer questions when somebody buys a hammer from me. Jeff had a question about what I changed on my handles, because he loves his handle. It wasn't a specific change that I made to all my handles. It was the person who had a concern. He had a specific handle shape in mind, and he ordered a hammer. We didn't think to, and now I discuss the handle as well as the everything else as part of the buy a hammer for Yamez thing, because it has to be a tool that you can use, and if the hammer is or the handle is uncomfortable, it's part of the tool that needs to be comfortable. So what I did, Jeff, was I literally, it's like, okay, he bought the hammer, mentioned that he didn't like the handle. I got with him, or he got with me, and I had him send me some pictures of his handles that he used as his favorite handle. I took, asked a picture of his hand and this and that, and I ground up a new handle for him, and I did my my magic on the burn and everything, and sent it to him, and he reheaded it, and he loves it. He actually, when he met me at Quad State, he gave me the old handle back. Here, you can use it. I took it off neatly. And I was like, oh, cool, So it wasn't that my handles are bad. It's just he was looking for a different shape, different style handle, is all. Mm. So, and I've had hammer makers come to me and say, well, you're making a hammer, you're not making a handle. And it's like, no, you need to be, you know what, if you can't just slap a store-bought handle on it and call it done. You have to get with them. Okay, do you prefer a thicker handle? Do you prefer a thinner handle? Do you prefer a flare at the end? I do a flare at the ends of all of mine. A little finger notch at the very end to let you know that you're reaching the end of the hammer. And I've been told, no, that's too custom. You're not supposed to do that. You're a blacksmith, not a woodworker. It's like, if you're a tool maker, the handle's part of the
tool. And every knife is supposed to have the same handle as well, right?
Yes, that's right.
You're a tool maker. A handle is the human tool interface, the liaison between the metal and
the that rounding hammer that I made for the farrier. I plugged in a what do you call it, store-bought handle, right, and burned it. And when she picked it up, she's like, "Oh, this is great! This is great. Is it cool if I, change the handle shape, if I sand the handle down?" I was like, "No, by all means. I mean, that's kind of the idea. I mean, you got to, adjust it to what's comfortable for you."
Yeah.
And so I have no problem with that. I mean, I would expect it, actually.
Well, yeah, to a point. Like, if you're doing I do, as most of you know, have seen my handle burns and everything, I do pretty, I don't want to say proprietary, because I'm not that vain, but I do pretty unique handle burns, between the circles that I do and the electro shock therapy for my handles, and people seem to love them. They love the looks. And when you do something, when you put that much effort into the look of a handle, you really don't want, the person buying it really doesn't want to mess that up, and then have to recreate it. And knowing that, I ask at least the basics. Do you prefer a thin or thick handle? And that at least gets the handle closer to what they would be comfortable swinging. Because I 100% believe in, when you buy a tool, especially a custom handmade tool, it should come out of the box ready to swing. Like, I've received handmade tools that required dressing, that the grinding wasn't done yet, and it's like this isn't a finished product.
Well, I mean, I'd prefer that every hammer in my inventory had a handle like a Charming Hollow Forge handle, but I am unwilling to take every one of my hammers over to the belt sander and whittle down the handles. I'm just like, I'll just use them the way they are, even though they're not my favorite shape of handle.
Yeah,
Lazy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's me.
But
I'm also sporting a 1x30. So I mean, come on, give me a break.
I'll give you that too. You've got a one up on several people with that though. You have the ability, even though it's not the most comfortable, you have the ability to not be picky and to be able to use different shaped handles. There are some people out there who cannot use a handle if it is not exactly like every single one of their other handles.
Like me, because thick handles screw up my arm.
Yeah. I also put, and I've had some requests, don't do it on my hammer, but I generally, when I do a hammer, the planishing face, if you're right-handed, if you hold the hammer in your right hand and the planishing face is down, there's a small flat on your fingers, and then the other side is round, so that when you blindly flip it, you can touch like that and know, you can touch with your fingers and know which face is down without even looking at the handle. If it's round against your fingers, the peen face is down, whether it's rounding, cross, diagonal, straight, what have you. If you flip it around and you got flat, that's your planishing face. I do that to 90% of all my handles.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but that's just something that I prefer, and I kind of think helps smiths when they're in the heat of battle with hot steel, not having to stop and waste the split second to make sure that their proper face is down.
What, Yamas? I've noticed that, but I'd never actually consciously noticed that. I'm just thinking about, I have one of your hammers. I'm thinking, you know what? There is actually like that. I didn't even consciously realize that.
Yep, it's a subconscious thing. Once you get used to a handle by me that I do that to, it'll blow your mind how even several split seconds, can be saved on when you're dealing with, heat loss.
Yeah, I get a lot of comments because my English cutlass hammers are becoming quite popular, which I'm very happy with, because I'm always happy to improve the overall idea of English cutlass hammers as good hammers. People are always interested in how the handles are very different to every other hammer they've ever handled, because they're curved handles. And it takes a little bit of getting used to. But everyone seems to have liked them so far.
Yeah. Actually, while we're on the subject of handles, it looks as though Eric has a question. And I know we've gone into it, but, we're here to help. Is there a way to properly fit a hammer handle to your hand?
No. There's...
Quick answer. Simple answer. No, there's not a set proper way. The only way to really do it is to, use several different handles and find what's comfortable for your grip, in your forging technique, and then you'll find over time that you have a favorite hammer because of its handle and how comfortable it is to use. Because as I said before, the handle is just as important as the head, because it is the interface it is the link between your hand, your body, your tactile senses, and the tool that you're using to move metal. So it has to be
no big words here. I'm listening.
I have a romantic view, so to speak, when it comes to blacksmithing, and a hammer is a special tool because it is so, it's a part of you when you're using it, and the handle is the most important part of making that happen. So really, the only way to properly fit your hammer handles to your hand is find which one is most comfortable for you, and then tweak the other handles to match it.
Try a variety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Find
a
a lot of
larger
that,
weight handle, or larger weight hammer, I tend to have a thicker grip on those, personally, just so that, you know, I can, if in a moment I need a quick death grip, I can, you know, grip it and then throw it down, but I never hold that death grip the whole time, you know. It's like a quick, okay, make sure it's straight and then release, you know, like relax, you know.
Yeah.
But and that technique, like when I'm doing it, when I'm drifting a hammer eye, that technique that I use, it's easier with a thicker handle for me to control a larger head, you know, to line it up and then relax it.
Yeah.
You know.
Sorry, I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at Ben.
Romancing
Ben's trying to.
I didn't see what he said. He retracted it.
You know, Ben Toombs is trying to get me to send him a hammer. Not gonna happen, Ben. Sorry.
Yeah. But
Because you can send me money and then I'll send you a hammer. But Chewy actually came back and asked a question. What is our favorite hammer steels, each of us?
Can anybody
I know
guess
what
mine?
yours is, Yamez.
That cracky A36.
Yeah, it's a
A33,
Shattery
yeah.
A36.
Yeah.
A33.
The great
That's
destructible.
I'm
Hey,
definitely
Hammond.
a 4140 person myself.
4140.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
I've never made a
I've-
hammer, so I don't know.
Okay.
Fair enough. I've recently become a convert to 1045.
I was gonna say.
I was 4140 for a long time.
Yeah.
I
remember you
but I
saying
have been
something about-
enjoying playing with 1045.
I remember you saying something about 1045 hammers and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, because if I don't use A33, I use 1045.
Yeah.
Now,
Having made exactly one hammer, a trailer axle.
why did you convert from 4140 to 1045?
So, well, the main reason I converted was purely because of stock availability. It was really hard to get a hold of 4140 for a while, and 1045 was plentiful everywhere. So 1045 was definitely, the easier to get a hold of, so therefore I started using it. But I also found that its hardenability was slightly higher than 4140, which was good for, access to the ability to get hard hammers. I prefer softer faced hammers than some, as has been discussed many a time on both the podcast and on my channel and everywhere else. But I think the hardenability of 1045 is definitely one of the ways I go. One of the reasons I like it so much. Also, I've found that it moves slightly easier under the hammer at heat. Just in my experience in the short amount of time that I've been doing it, I think I've made 12, 13 hammers out of 1045 so far, and they all seem to have been a little bit easier to move than my 4140 hammers were.
I do have to issue a quick correction on the behalf of Mr. Tim. He said
What I do.
He said he has not made a hammer. He has made a hammer, and it was out of 1045.
No, it wasn't, and I didn't. You're talking about the anvil on Scrappy.
No, I'm talking about the class that you took at Quad State.
Oh, no. That was... I did not make a hammer. I created an abomination.
Okay.
There was also the Damascus hammer.
What's that?
So there was also the Damascus hammer that cracked.
The Damascus hammer? I've never made a Damascus hammer. I made some Damascus and sent it to...
Oh, that's right. That's right. You made the Damascus and sent it to somebody else that made a hammer out of it. That's right.
Yeah, and I never saw the hammer. He didn't show me any pictures of it, but he said that the Damascus cracked. I wasn't sure how that happened or why it did, but we never followed up on it, so not sure.
Could have delaminated during the punch. That does happen occasionally.
Now, the funny thing is it was twisted Damascus, and it has a very tight twist in it. So delamination in twisted Damascus is kind of rare.
Yeah.
Well,
but
yeah,
you know
unless it delaminates during the twist.
yeah, I guess.
I believe if I recall correctly, it cracked across the face during the heat treat.
Could have been. Yeah, I don't remember. Oh, that was Dan Moss that did that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I sent him. I think I sent him 3 billets, and it never really went anywhere. But I am going to segue into something else now that we're talking about that, because I have Sam here, and you have a plethora of knowledge about this stuff. And let's see, here's the question I'm going to ask. So my experience, and this is only my experience, I can only speak to that, because the whole pattern welded steel thing has been on the planet for a million years. And it's not all been Damascus. I mean, look what the Vikings were doing with their serpents and their blades and, that kind of thing. It's not Damascus, it's pattern welded. So we're not going to get into that argument. But what I would like to know is hammer versus Preston. I know you have Preston there. I don't think you have a power hammer, but this has been my experience. I've seen other smiths, and they'll bring their work out of the fire ready to forge weld, and they'll grab a light hammer and tap, 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 and right back in the forge. And this was never all of the research I've done in my earlier teachings from, it wasn't Fred, it was later on in the 80s, from an individual who was on his way to being a master bladesmith. Never ran into that guy after that first two. Anyway, get onto that later. Anyway, so the whole thing was that's incorrect. It shouldn't be done that way. The impact of the initial set on the weld that you make on any pattern welded steel, differential steels that are meeting one another, needs to be an impact that will not only fuse the steels together, but also push out the impurities from between them. So working from one end to the other, to sort of like a toothpaste tube to push those impurities and any borax that's between those layers out, and create that fusion through shock. So for years, what I did was, heavy hammer by hand, working from one end to the other, bam, bam, bam. And I've never had a problem with major delaminations, but we all do. I can't say I've never had one, but I've never had like a huge problem with it. So I've got my press here, Floyd, and I've got Scrappy the power hammer, and I have a lot higher success rate with Scrappy if I'm using a power hammer to set the initial weld, working from sort of the welded on handle and then dragging it back through, again, sort of like a toothpaste tube, and all that stuff sort of squirts out the side, and I get a real good fusion. But when I use the press, I tend to press into laminations that don't get squirted out, you might say. They're not huge, there just seems to be more inclusions in those welds. Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, so I haven't had the advantage of being able to work with a power hammer so far. So as far as that goes, I can't really speak to it. But I have made Damascus both by hand and with the press. Now I utilize a slightly different method with my Damascus, in which I use the press almost exclusively for all of my Damascus. And I haven't really seen any problems. Like I haven't had any major delaminations or even minor ones since I started. And that could just be luck. That just could be down to my, billet prep and making sure everything's clean and straight and all that kind of stuff. Who knows? But yeah, I have found, so basically when I started making Damascus, I did a bunch of research, and I was put on to Walter Sorrells and Kevin Cashin and Kyle Royer, and all three of those guys utilize almost exclusive lessers to do their Damascus.
Yes,
because they do. So basically, the theory that I got told by Kevin Cashin was that basically it causes not only the profusion of borax, so basically you got to worry about escape of borax and all that kind of stuff, but it's also about the compression between weld seams. The issue that you run into with impact in the case where the impact is too light is that you end up with too little compression, and not enough surface contact between the materials. Whereas with a press, you are forcing that material to touch each other. But a lot of the time, one of the issues that I think people run into is either their press dies are slightly ovate, like they're slightly concave, in which case
happens.
they're pressing on the edges before they press the center, or they're
creating a pocket or a
creating a
void
bubble
for things to settle into. Yeah, right. Okay,
that's right.
following you.
Or they're trying to press all at once, and when they've done their billet prep or anything like that, there is concavity inside the billet already. Like one of the things I go through is all my billets are either ground perfectly flat, or when I use my grinder, I use my rubber contact wheel, and that creates a slightly convex surface on all of the contact surfaces, so that only the centers of the bars are touching each other. And they're all lens shaped. It's very, very slight, but they're all lens shaped. So there's all a tapering hole out the sides, so that gives the flux an out, basically.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. Again, I can't really speak to like power hammer and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, as far as my experience has gone thus far in all the Damascus that I've been making, I haven't had a problem with delaminations purely just going on that technique. So yeah.
Thanks for your input. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for the question.
If I may, not tangent. It's actually on exact topic. If I may offer a goofy thought that may be a potential aha moment. Tim using the analogy of squeezing out the toothpaste, which, is very apt. I just had a thought, and I don't know if it's been done or tried and failed or what, but what about using or making a press die set that is, think like an English wheel, but, like rollers, top and bottom rollers, big heavy-duty rollers, that you put your Damascus, you put your billet in, crush it, bring it down to just a little bit, and then pull through, and then slowly push the press up while you're moving it back and forth, squeezing it like toothpaste.
That would be a McDonald rolling mill.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say.
So that
it's
exists.
Already been invented.
Oh,
yeah, it's already been invented.
Okay. Well, there you go.
As a matter of fact, I was thinking about building one at some point in the future, a small one. But,
that would be an awesome video.
A guy here in Australia named Hugh McDonald developed a small, self-contained rolling mill design. There have been rolling mills forever in various stuff. If you watch Man at Arms, after a while they ended up getting one from a Victory racing plate where they used to draw out material for horseshoes. But the McDonald rolling mill is pretty famous here in Australia because it was like he put up the designs. I can't remember where they are now, but a whole bunch of people built them and started selling them. And they're incredibly useful, especially for drawing out material, because obviously very minimal surface contact with the dies, and it squeezes it like a tube of toothpaste, funnily enough. So yeah, that does. That technology does exactly exist.
Okay.
Now, Liz, you're just a few years too late. That's all.
Well, I mean, I've never seen it done like home shop, blacksmith shop, pressing Damascus like that and using it like an English
actually,
wheel.
It's the same technology that they use in the hot roll mills where they're making mild steel on a daily basis. It's just a couple of rollers, it squeezes it like you said, a toothpaste tube, and it's the technology isn't super difficult. It's getting it put together in the right way so it won't break on you while you're using it. But
getting the axles right.
Yeah, I don't normally see in a sort of a home YouTube do this in your backyard video.
Yeah, you can even go nuts with it and do multiple sets of rollers, like 2 rollers side by side, top and bottom, and so that it's 2.
That's too ambitious.
Yeah, a little bit too. Actually, funnily enough, my good friend Dee Hedges, who's a journeyman smith for the ABS, she hasn't made blades in a while because she's had other issues. She actually has a rolling mill at her shop, and I've been really keen to try it out, but unfortunately we haven't set up a date for us to hang out yet. So maybe one day in the near future you'll see me running a rolling mill as well. So
Yeah.
That would be awesome. That would be
Yeah.
really cool.
yeah, she's got a 25-pound little giant as well that I want to have a go at, because I haven't had an opportunity to run a power hammer yet, so I'm hanging out.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. The first power hammer I ran was many hundreds of years ago when I was a young lad, and I fell in love with it immediately. And I've built several power hammers over the years, but the latest iteration, Scrappy here, is holding up extremely well and does a phenomenal job. And the thing about that is a lot of I remember when I first started YouTube several years ago, I got a lot of crap. You're not a real blacksmith, you use a power hammer. Well, okay.
Yeah.
That's that's all well and good. You're fine. If that's what the limitation is there, then I'm not a blacksmith.
Yep.
But the good thing about it is
Sorry.
Oh no, you're good. So the thing about it is that now that I am my age, I'm early 60s, going into mid 60s. My arm is starting to wear out. I can't hold onto my hammer as long or as well. I've got a bunch of arthritis in my hand. And the power hammer is just doing a bunch of work for me now. I grab a little lighter hammer to do the finish work, but it'll keep me going for several more years, simply because they were a production tool in the beginning. And they're kind of a hobbyist thing that you can build yourself. I mean, a lot of people do. But the fact is that they've been around. Oh, geez. I mean, you probably heard about it, Sam. They found one from like the 13th century in China.
Ancient Chinese mechanicals. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, there's some insanely old ones out there. There was one in Sweden that's from like 1400 as well.
Yeah,
water powered one.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say,
that power hammers have been around since the advent of blacksmithing, basically.
It's because we're all lazy. Who wants to swing a hunk of metal all day long? Come on.
Oh, I mean, yeah. The moment you start trying to make money out of it, like, as a smith, when I went full time, the first thing I thought of was mechanizing parts of my forging, hence Preston. Because even I at 30 years old am feeling the wear on my shoulder and stuff like that, and I know that in 10, 20 years, should I continue to do this, I hope I do, then it will wear me out.
It will.
So
it will.
If I'm going to get crap for using using a press or using a power hammer or stuff like that, and the only reason I don't have a power hammer is because I live in the suburbs and my neighbors would kill me.
It's like, take last night's.
I'm lucky that I get away with as much as I do.
Take last night's show for example, for considering power hammers. Last night during the show, it's like I was doing. I took a sploot bowl that I made last week, and I changed what I'm doing. I'm not doing a bowl. I'm doing a jellyfish sculpture with LED accents. And I was making the stand for the, that would hold the jellyfish to a base. And I was just going to take a piece of 1/4 inch round stock and just boom, done. And didn't have any, couldn't find any. So I took a bar of 1/2 inch and jumped on the power hammer and drew it out and used that instead. I did that because the show wasn't for drawing out, spending the whole show drawing out a bar. The show was getting a piece to show how it would fit. And I didn't want to spend, an hour and a half drawing out, 12 inches of 1/2 inch stock to be, 2 foot of, 1/4 inch stock. And, so just knock it out right quick, and that's the, benefit, the production value of a power hammer is, it allows you to do something that you can do by hand easily, minus time.
I mean, I made quite a few I made quite a few sets of tongs before I got Preston, but I made a hell of a lot more after I got him.
I will say, because all the Australians
drawing out reins became a lot easier.
all the Australians in the stream here, if they could all give a shout out to Chewy's wife, she is loving the Australian accents. So-
Hi, Chewie's wife.
G'day, Chewie's wife.
Yeah, Adam is far more Australian than me.
Yeah.
He's just a West Australian, mate. On the topic of power hammers, when I get my new workshop built out at the new property, I fully intend on building a side power hammer just so I can get Sam to come up and visit me occasionally.
And
Any excuse.
Speaking of which, real quick, I hear tell of a gathering of Australian blacksmiths. As I understand it, there's like an armada of Australian blacksmiths are going to be descending on Sam's shop soon. And,
Oh no, I hope not.
No, not Sam's shop. I will be going to WA soon, the end of this month actually, and I'm currently trying to organise a mini hammering with some of the Smiths in WA. Now, won't be held at Sam's shop because Sam has a tiny shop. We also don't want to aggravate his lovely, and very understanding and caring wife. So,
Who also has the keys to my gun safe?
and she knows what I look like. I have a place. I have been talking with Tech from Techromatic, and he still in talks with me. It's likely that he will be hosting. But yeah, so we're trying to get hold of any of the Smiths in WA. Of course, we don't want to absolutely swamp old Tech, young Tech, I should say. But but I thought because I'm coming down, Western Australia for me, Perth is the most accessible place for me to go. And I'm slowly trying to build a community of blacksmiths here in Darwin, but it's happening very, very slowly.
When I moved there,
so just trying to get hold of Western Australian Smiths at the moment down and around Perth. There's one reason why I was trying to get hold of Wombat a couple of weeks ago because he still hasn't messaged me, but because I know he lives south of Perth, apparently about 300 odd kilometres south, but it's still within driving distance for us Australians, which is about 300 kilometres, about 150 miles for you Americans.
200, yeah, so roughly. But yeah, there is actually a hammer-in that's going on on the 5th of June, I found out, is when it's going on. So there's going to be like 2 hammer-ins in a week.
Right. Isn't it nuts when they just pile on and it's like, man, I can't make them all. I want to go to all of them.
Yeah, well, I'm keynote speaker at the other one, so I've got to make sure I go to that one at least. Right. And seeing as Adam's coming all the way from the Northern Territory, I might make the time to hang out with him, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's all right.
He did pay for 2 classes, so I'm kind of obligated.
He's all right.
You guys in Australia make things sound so cool. The Northern Territory. We don't have one of those.
Yeah, you're
awesome.
You're in the Northern Territory.
I live in the suburbs, much like Sam does, and I've got a neighbor their houses are literally 12 foot on either side of my house, and my property goes back a little bit. But yeah, I don't smith. I don't run the power hammer after like 8 o'clock at night, kind of thing. But getting some brand new neighbors on one side, and I've been really friendly with all of them. I make them things and give them things, keeps them all happy and smiley and all that. And the new neighbors look a little bit curmudgeon-y. May have to change my tactic. I'm not sure. But
every time I get a new neighbor, I always get a little nervous because I'm always worried they're going to be the ones that end up calling the council.
Right.
Around here, there's no.
Go, Tim. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, around here, they don't have a council. We just they call the police, and they show up. What are you doing? I'm trying to burn the neighborhood down. What are you doing?
Somebody was asking about
the reason why I bought 40 acres away from everyone so that I could make as much noise as I want. But the other reason is so that eventually, again, when I build my workshop, I can hold the Great Australian Hammer and invite everyone, all the wonderful people that I like Sam, to all come to me and have a major big hammering because I'll have plenty of room for people to camp.
Yeah.
As long as it's during winter.
I'd love to make it over to the Northern Territory one of these days. It's a long swim.
Yeah. I think we could build a rubber raft, young man.
Yeah, I got kayaks.
just
I'd have to sail it. I'd have to sail it around the Horn first and get over to where you're at on the East Coast.
Well, there's the Panama Canal.
Paddle, you know.
I got 2 kayaks, Tim. You get here, we'll go there. How's that?
And have to. Okay, there you go. And then we'll paddle down around South Africa,
Yeah.
over towards Australia. Probably get lost, end up in New Zealand, the Galapagos somewhere. That would suck.
Yeah.
I don't know. Galapagos is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, never been there. Always wanted to go.
Yeah. One of these days we'll have an international gathering of blacksmiths. We'll find an easy location for everybody to get to, and get like 100 acres and just invite, an invitation to the world. If you swing a hammer, show up.
Well, give me a couple of years and I'll be over in America. So
Yeah.
maybe then.
You know what's going to happen, Sam? Me and you are. It's going to be like, yeah, give me a couple of years till I get to Australia. What's going to happen is you're going to go to America to do something, and at that exact same time, I'm going to be in Australia, and it'll be like, crossing, and it'll be like an episode of Scooby Doo kind of thing, through the doors. Wait, no, turn around.
So you can high five out the window of the airplane on your way by.
Yeah,
That's right.
reach.
Hey, Ahmed.
Yes.
Ahmed, I got a question for you real quick. So, can I upload a video onto your thing here? How do you do that? Is that possible, or can I not do that?
On Discord, I'm honestly not sure. I believe I've tried to upload videos, and I don't know.
Actually, I've
If
tried here, and it gives me a little error message. It says that the owner of this channel doesn't want that to happen, so go away.
Oh, hold on.
I'm just curious. I was going to share. Actually, I think you've probably already seen it. I'm not sure. A little creation, and I've got to go soon, so I was going to get out of here and know you one last time. It says, "Whoa there! The owner of this Forge chat has requested that Discord block any messages
I've allowed to attach files.
or mostly robot deemed to be explicit."
No, it's
You guys don't want to see explicit photos, I guess. Apparently,
it's permission.
Not that kind of chat, Tim.
I've switched it
Yeah,
for
it's
now
not.
to allow adding files. I don't know how that works. I'm not a Discord pro.
I am not any kind of pro at this. I
But
can tell you anything about computer hardware, but when it comes to the software that controls it, I'm an idiot.
Might it be in the personal permissions?
I did.
Personal permission.
I did. On the
Don't worry yourself. It's
on
not
the
a big
Island Metal
deal.
Forge channel, I did allow files, so that may be.
Island Metal Forge channel. I think that's where I'm at. Because I hit the Blacksmith Church and think that your chat is on Island Metal Forge.
Yeah, it's the YouTube community chat, Island Metal Forge, RH Forge Works, Blacksmithing in Goshen, and then the Blacksmith Church is the voice chat, which Rob has suggested that it keeps to invite, invite only, so that people don't jump in, go, random bad words, and then leave.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
So that's why, in order to be on the show, I've got to accept you into the permissions list.
Nice.
Yeah, basically, keep the bends out.
Oh, okay. You don't want to get the bends? That's your thing?
But yeah, if you try posting it now, I've
I
never
will
really.
try. I will try. Let's see if I'm in the right place. So, you know what? This is going to boil down to being really, really dumb here, but place I'm posting it, there's a current chat going on between a couple of individuals.
Yes.
Stress and Robert Lyons. And it still says the same thing. Clydebot is what it says.
Yeah.
There's no. It is a Clydebot. Wow, I had no idea. You have bots.
Let me just try.
Do can you get a shot for that?
There's what
Sorry
I get.
about that. Yeah, so it doesn't matter. It was just a goofy little thing. Anyway, guys, am going to have to get going.
Me too.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna say, if everybody's cool, call that a show. We did quite a long show, and I appreciate all of you guys sticking with us. I believe we are at over 2.5 hours. It's the longest church I've attended.
Easily the longest episode so far.
Less fire and brimstone.
Maybe the longest episode for the church, but definitely not my longest episode. I've done 8 hours streaming.
Just church in specific. But.
Yeah. So with that, let's, with a bit of brevity, so that we can let people get on with their days. I didn't realize we were pushing almost 3 hours. Give a round of applause and thank those who participated in the voice chat. Huge thank you to
thank you very much,
Tim.
Thank you, Sam. Last minute. Appreciate it.
And thank you all for your awesome questions to keep him going.
Thanks for inviting me. Sorry I kept rambling for hours.
No, that's the more information, man. Give people something to look up if they need to. And of course, as always, thank you, Tim, for starting this all and bringing this all to fruition.
Like I've always said, it's always been you guys. It's never been about me. But you guys are awesome. I do appreciate it. I am going to have to run. Thanks again, Sam. Thanks, everybody. And thank you for having me and allowing me to join in on this. So you guys have a really, really great day. And we'll see you next time. Maybe someday we can get together and have a beer, Sam.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a plan, mate. Sounds like a plan.
All right. See you later.
All right.
See you, Tim.
And, any last words before I end the stream? What do you want on your tombstone? Sausage and pepperoni, please. Sorry. For those who don't know, Tombstone is a brand of pizza.
I'm your Huckleberry.
And they used that as an advertising. What do you want on your tombstone? Sausage and pepperoni, please. Okay. I'm so stupid. All right, guys. I'm glad this is a very informative stream. That's why I let it go as long as it did. I wanted it to progress naturally and not have that time constraint of gotta get everything in. So I hope we cleared up a lot of questions. I know Morante, who sparked this whole thought of having a metal discussion, he left very happy about an hour ago. So thank you guys, and for the record, after I end the stream, I do stay in the church chat for a little bit for a little after chat, so anybody's welcome to continue with that. So anyway, with that, hello Ouroboros. Yeah, we are ending.
Still going.
we went long. We had Tim and Sam playing off of each other, and it was fantastic.
Man, anytime that I'm involved, it just goes on and on and on.
A lot of good information was just shared. So anybody who's just jumping in now, Kaylin, I highly recommend flipping through it. It's a lot of good information today. With that, I'm going to end the stream, get out to the shop, do something awesome, make something beautiful, be productive. And y'all are just freaking awesome. Bye.
Bye,
everyone,
everybody.
guys.
See you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
And we're clear.